In this mini lesson, I'm going to show you how to use the COUNTIFS function to figure out whether some data are normally distributed or not. These are the marks of 50 students, and I'll let you in on a secret. They are exactly normally distributed. That's how I made it. Normally, they're in a single column or in a single row, but it also works if they're in a rectangle like this. So I've calculated the average, or the mu. We're going to consider these to be population data. So the mu is found with an average formula, and then the sigma, or the standard deviation, is found with a standard deviation dot p formula, and that comes out to 12. So now our first empirical rule says that 68.3% of the distribution should be within plus or minus 1 standard deviation of the mean. So 60 minus 12 is 48, and 60 plus 12 is 72. Our second empirical rule, 95% within 2 standard deviations, so that would be 60 plus or minus 2 times 12 is 36 to 84. And then our third empirical rule, 99.7%, or virtually 100% within 3 standard deviations of the mean, 60 plus or minus 3 times 12, which is 24 to 96. Okay, let's go down here and use a COUNTIFS function. Hey, before I do that, I'm going to take a bit of an aside. Some people ask, how do you get symbols like mu and sigma and plus and minus and even xbar? So let me show you where you get those. Normally we're on the Home tab in Excel, and by the way, your Excel might look a little bit different from mine, but you'll find these things all in the same place. So I'm going to go over to the Insert tab, or Insert ribbon, and on the far right you'll see something that says Symbols. I'm going to choose Symbol, and at the very top here we've got Basic Latin. So that's your normal stuff. And if we scroll down, we'll probably find plus and minus, because that's actually a really common one. I'm not going to click on that right now because I want to go and grab the mu first. Now you might say, hey Doug, the mu is right below you. You've got the mu and the sigma and the plus and minus, but that's because these are my recently used symbols. So I tend to use them a lot in stats classes. When you open up Excel, you won't necessarily see that. So let me show you where you find them. I'm going to go over here to the different character sets and scroll down until I find the Greek and Coptic. So a mu is a small letter mu in Greek. These are the capital letters, and then down here are the small letters. So there's a mu. I'm going to insert it, and you'll see that it comes in A16 because that was the cell that I had selected. I'm going to push a space, and then I'll need to go back up here to Symbols again, and I'm going to go back up to the Basic Latin and scroll down until I find the plus and minus. Insert that, and then push a space, and then go and grab the sigma. And the sigma is under Greek again. There we go, Greek and Coptic. And it is a small sigma, so it's on the next line from the mu. It's right here. So I'm going to insert that and close it. Space equals. Actually, I can go back and put in a 1 sigma and then copy this down. So Control C and a paste, Control V, and again, and then I'm just going to go up here and change the 1 to a 2 to a 3, like that. Now, if you're dealing with a sample, of course, you would have an xbar plus or minus an S. So let me show you how you get an xbar. I'm going to type in small x and then go up to Symbols, and I'm going to choose something called a diacritical mark. So combining diacritical marks. And here's my bar over top of the X. So I click that, and what it does is it actually backs up the cursor and puts the bar over top of the X so they combine them. And I can just close that. So that's how you get an xbar. Now, we don't actually need that for this particular problem because these are population numbers, and so I'm just going to delete that. But that's how you get an xbar. Okay, let's go back up here, and I'm going to click in B16, and I'm going to use a COUNTIFS function that will count how many of these 50 values up here are between 48 and 72. That's our first empirical rule. So make sure that I've chosen the right cell, so in my case then B16, and then I go up to Formulas, More Functions, Statistical, and I'm going to scroll down until I find COUNTIFS. Now there's a COUNTIF without the S. I don't want that one, I want the COUNTIFS. So click on that, and it says the criteria range. So the criteria range are just these 50 numbers here. So I can click and drag to highlight them, or I can type in the coordinates, A3 to J7. Now, one thing that you might want to do, because we're going to be copying this formula down, is to push F4 to push dollar signs around all of the numbers and letters, or you can type them in yourself if the F4 key doesn't work on your particular machine, like that. So $A, $3, colon, $J, $7. And that makes it an absolute cell reference. If you want more information on absolute cell referencing, go to the cell referencing video that I made. Okay, the criteria, when you're dealing with a range, it's kind of goofy. You can't just simply put in a single number. You need to put in quotes, greater than or equal to 48. So I use double quotes, and they don't show up very well here on the screen, but they are double quotes. Quote, greater than or equal to 48, close quote. Now, of course, if the standard deviation is not an integer, if it was something like 12.1, then my lower bound would be 47.9, and I could just simply put in quote greater than 47.9, pardon me, close quote. And since they're all integers, I wouldn't need to put in that equal sign. But because these are all integers, 48 may be one of the numbers, so I'm going to put in greater than or equal to 48. Okay, my criteria 2 range is the same range that I had above, so I can do a Control C, or I can go and highlight the numbers again, or just type them in, but I've got the same A3 to J7. And the criteria 2 range, this is the upper bound, is going to be quote less than or equal to the upper bound, which is 72, close quote. Now we can use cell referencing, so instead of putting in 48 or 72, we could reference those cells, and maybe I'll show you that at the very end here, but it's something that you can just type in as a constant because otherwise it gets more complex. And by the way, it's easier to mark. So there is how you do this. I'm going to press OK, and you'll see that we have 34 values. Let me copy this particular formula up here. So just click and drag. I'm going to do a Control C, escape, and then just simply move over one cell and paste it. Control V. And then before the equal sign, up here in the formula bar, I'm going to click in front of the equal sign and put an apostrophe. And that makes this into text, so I can see the actual formula that gave me the 34. All right, that's the first one, 34. Let's go up here and copy this. So I can do a Control C, or I can copy it up here if you want to do it there. So copy, and then highlight a couple cells and paste right there. and then I can just go and edit these. So the second rule of thumb, or the second empirical rule, says that within 2 standard deviations we've got 95.4% of the data. So that's from 36 to 84. So I'm just going to change the 48 to a 36, and then scroll over and change that 72 to an 84 and press enter. And so there's 48. Let me copy, Control C, escape, move over, paste, Control V, and then put a little apostrophe in front of the equal sign. And I'm going to do the same over here, except I have to change the 48 here to 24, arrow over, and the 72 is going to change to a 96. So that's 3 standard deviations from the mean. And I'm going to copy that formula. And so there are my 3 formulas. Good. So those are the actual counts. Let me just show you up here. The 34 values are from 48, so it's these 2 here, 49, 49, and then there's 20 in each row here. So I've got 30 right here, and then I've got these 2 guys down here. So that's 48 to 72, and if you just count those yellow cells there, you'll see that there's 34 out of 50. So 34 out of 50 is, here, I'm just going to copy these guys down again. Control C, and then paste, Control V. So I'm going to have equals 34, and of course I could go and reference those cells that have the 34. And that comes to 68%. Let me copy and paste that over here. Let me just show you that as a formula. There we go. And then, again, I could go and just simply click there, B17. But if you're doing this in the stats assignment, I'd like to actually see the numbers. So if you could type them in as equals 48 divided by 50. I know that's not efficient as far as Excel goes, but it sure makes it a lot easier to mark. Okay, so copy and paste. And then the last one here is 50 out of 50, which of course is 100%. And so there we go. Last thing I would do is just change these into percentages. So here's your percent button. It's on the Home tab, right in about the middle here. We've got the number format, percent, and then you can change this to 1 decimal place if you want. Of course, these turn out to be exactly 68, 96, and 100, but you can take it to 1 decimal place. And now what we've got here is we can compare these, and so this is, oops, spell it right, Doug. Come on. There we go. Compared to 68.3%. Fingers aren't on the right keys there. To 95.4% and compared to 99.7%. So here we would say almost exactly the same. Of course, if it was high or low, you would say it's higher than what we would expect or lower. And so here we've got that, almost exactly the same. And so what we've got here is that these data appear to be normally distributed. And that is the end of the regular lesson. I did want to show you one aside here, and I'm not expecting you to do this. In fact, it'll probably cause you more trouble than good, but it's so cool. I just need to show you anyways, and that is instead of actually typing in a 48 here and a 72 here, how would you actually do cell referencing for that? Well, the way that you do that is you'd need to have a 48 and a 72 in a cell over here. Of course, you'd probably use a formula where you would take this number and subtract that number to get the 48 and so on, but that's easy. You know how to do that. Now, notice that this is in cell I12, and then this one's in J12. So what I'm going to do over here is just edit these guys. And it gets kind of goofy when you're mixing symbols with numbers from a cell. So this is what I do is I back up the 48 like this, and I close the quote there, so it says quote. I'm at the top in the formula bar if you're not sure where I'm at here. So double quote, greater than or equal to, close quote, and then and, where's that, above the 7? And then I click on this particular cell. So I'm using cell referencing. What happened there? I'm just going to type that in. I12, like that. And then over here, instead of 72, I'm going to put equals, close quote, and J12, which is the cell reference there. And I should get the same number here. Now, oh, I know what I did is I edited the formula. That's not a problem. I'm just going to copy that over here and take off the apostrophe, and I should get 34. Let's see what happens. Ta-da! Good. So that's how you use cell referencing there and combine text and a cell reference actually within a complex formula. Again, I'm not expecting you to do that, but that's how you would do that more efficiently using Excel. And of course you would use, as I mentioned up here, the 48 and the 72, you would use cell referencing there, and down here, of course, you would use cell referencing as well. So that would be just simply 34 divided by the 50. That would, I suppose you could do that this way, the count of all these guys. Like that. So that's how you can do that using cell referencing. I would prefer that you just simply use the constants because it makes it a whole lot easier to mark. And that ends the lesson.